is about targeting women of color in the United States of America. Don't tell me, because I didn't get a single apology when my life was threatened. Thank you.
And Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez joins us now, fresh from Washington, D.C. Thank you so much for being with us.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
So Representative Omar said that the vote today was about revenge. Is that how you see it?
Absolutely. You know, I think this was about revenge. This was about petty politics. But also, I think it's also important to state that this was not just about Republicans trying to feed a base that they have already primed for years under Donald Trump with racism, misogyny, xenophobia, Islamophobia, but also it represents a stripping of an important perspective on the House Foreign Affairs Committee that Ilhan Omar, as a refugee, as an immigrant, as the only hijabi woman in the United States Congress, presents in. And that perspective is critical in terms of American foreign policy.
So you brought up race and religion. I want to play a little bit more of what you said on that front. Let's listen.
As a fellow New Yorker, I think one of the things that we should talk about here is also one of the disgusting legacies after 9/11 has been the targeting and racism against Muslim Americans throughout the United States of America. And this is an extension of that legacy. Consistency, there is nothing consistent with the Republican Party's continued attack except for the racism and incitement of violence against women of color in this body.
So you're talking about Representative Omar, who is, of course, from Somalia, a minority. But Swalwell and Schiff are both white guys. So that's not about race, but this is?
Well, you know, I think when we look at all three of these, first of all, when you look at Swalwell and Schiff, their targeting and the Republican Party's targeting of all three of them have always been about campaigning, and it has always been about the perspectives that they bring. It is about political revenge in the case of all three of them. Political revenge for Adam Schiff for his work on the impeachment of Donald Trump. Political revenge with Eric Swalwell in the his incisive ability to communicate against the Trump administration and the wrongdoings of the Republican Party. And in the case of Ilhan Omar, I believe that hers is absolutely especially amplified with racist targeting because this is what fed her base. This is the same representative that Donald Trump held rallies around, saying send her back to her, quote unquote, her country. Her country is the United States of America. She is an American. And so, you know, in the case of all three of these expulsions, there is either political revenge or there is the absolute agenda of racist, misogynist, and xenophobic targeting. And those three points, in addition to the political revenge, constitute modern Trumpian politics: pettiness, revenge, scorekeeping, and the use and the race and the baiting of identity in order to divide people up.
What do you think that Speaker McCarthy specifically gets out of this?
I think Speaker McCarthy gets a fundraising boon. I think he gets potentially currying favor with either Trump and his base, saying, I delivered on these promises. I'm a good soldier to the Trumpian political base. I am really letting the world know that the House Republican Party is now being fully transformed. We are cementing the transformation. Even with Donald Trump being gone, they are cementing the transformation of the Republican Party into a Trumpian party, one that settles petty political scores, that is no longer motivated by classic, quote unquote, conservative politics of reducing a tax base, et cetera, but that this is truly just about service to their benefactors.
So we're talking about Speaker McCarthy. During the vote on the House floor to make him Speaker, there was this video of you speaking to Congressman Paul Gosar, who we spoke about moments ago, posted the anime video showing the version of him attacking you. And you're seen there talking. There was sort of almost a smile somewhere in there, at least talking in an animated way. Should we take this to mean that you're okay with what he did, or he apologized to you?
No, there was never an apology. But I think what a lot of people sometimes fail to understand is that when a workplace has been made unsafe for a person, it is then up to that individual to try to survive on their own. This is not an institution that protects, this is not a party that protects people that they disagree with. But that being said, when it comes to those remarks with Representative Gosar, one of the things that I told him was, I can't stand what you did, and I can't stand what you stand for, but I don't think that you should support Kevin McCarthy for Speaker either. And, you know, that's one thing on one day that I think both of us were in alignment on.
Did you feel safe sitting there with him?
I think it's uncomfortable serving with people who engage in what many experts deem stochastic terrorism, which is the incitement of violence in a which is an incitement of violence using digital means and large platforms so that individual themselves may not be the one that's wielding a weapon. But I have had to ride, as has Representative Omar, consistently had to ride in 20,000-pound armored vehicles, engaging in some of the most gruesome threats that you can imagine that were incited by Republican members. This is not just about a tweet. It is about what life looks like and the marshaling of hundreds, thousands, if not millions of people into doing something. And Donald Trump knows that very well, and he used his rallies very strategically in order to engage in political intimidation of what he deemed his political enemies.
You think Donald Trump will be the Republican nominee?
I mean, we may see. He will either be the nominee or he will burn down anyone who isn't him who's the nominee.
Back to Paul Gosar. So just because you're talking to him, you're still against him being on committees?
Absolutely. Absolutely. You know, there has never been an apology. And by the way, that is something that highly distinguishes these situations. These individuals that Kevin McCarthy has chosen to appoint to committee. George Santos claimed that his grandparents were in the Holocaust. That was a lie. A disgusting lie. Marjorie Taylor Greene regularly trafficking in anti-Semitic conspiracy theories. Paul Gosar inciting, these are individuals, Marjorie Taylor Greene included, inciting violence against specific members in the body. He has appointed all three of them to House committees, not just one, but multiple. Marjorie Taylor Greene, who was engaging in 9/11 conspiracy theories, Kevin McCarthy appointed her to the Homeland Security Committee. So there is really no consistency here. And it needs to be very well known that this targeting of Ilhan Omar is because the Republican base finds it easy. The Republican base finds it politically self-rewarding. And I also believe that that the Republican base seeks to remove a perspective that challenges a certain foreign policy establishment in this country. She advocates against the just pivoting to war, the defaulting to use of violent means in American foreign policy. And she really pushes this country to engage in diplomatic means and to center the needs of refugees and survivors and the casualties of war.
We keep talking about Kevin McCarthy. Let's listen to a little bit of what the speaker said, how he justified this vote today.
No, and that's the clear part, how it's not tit for tat. We're not removing her from other committees. We just do not believe when it comes to foreign affairs, especially the responsibility of that position around the world with the comments that you make. She shouldn't serve there. But this is what if it was tit for tat, we would have picked people, took them off all committees and said nothing about it. We don't believe in that.
So what he's saying there is Gosar and Marjorie Taylor Greene were stripped of all their committee assignments. Representative Omar has been taken off foreign affairs, but I think is going to get put on budget, which is another sought-after committee there. And to be clear, she did make comments, which I'm not going to repeat here, that anti-Semitic. She did apologize for them, as you said there. So McCarthy saying it's not tit for tat. Does he have a point?
I don't think he does. First of all, when he says that Gosar and all these folks were removed from their committees, Republicans did not do that. In fact, they appointed them to committees. Paul Gosar is on House Oversight and I believe Natural Resources, the same two committees that I serve on, by the way, very selectively put this individual on the exact two committees that I've been appointed to.
You think that was intentional to put him on the committees?
I do not know. I cannot speak into Kevin McCarthy's mind, but it certainly should have been a consideration as Speaker of the House that he should have taken into account.
Because that Gosar posted the video attacking
absolutely,
you.
But beyond that, he also appointed Marjorie Taylor Greene to Oversight and Homeland Security. So this idea that they did it to one and the other is, I think is something that can be dispensed with. But when it comes to Representative Omar's role on the House Foreign Affairs Committee, she has modeled what coming together with a community looks like, what apology looks like. One of the leaders of the large group of Jewish members in Congress stood up in her several Jewish members of Congress, Jan Schakowsky, Dean Phillips, stood up in defense saying she has engaged in a process of reconciliation with us. This is a model of what this kind of incident should look like. They were begging Kevin McCarthy, as Jewish members of Congress, if you listen to what Jan Schakowsky was saying, you do not speak for me. You cannot do this on my behalf. And yet he still railroaded this, which is really what gives the whole game away. In fact, Representative Miller, who brought forth the resolution in discussing it today, really gave the whole game away when he started to equate a position that Amnesty International, certain bodies within the UN, even Israeli human rights organizations have been sounding the alarm that the human rights crisis in the West Bank and that Palestinians face is constituting apartheid. And he equated that position that global human rights organizations have already raised as anti-Semitic. And that right there is the slippery slope that we really need to be paying attention to.
So far in the House of Representatives, it's been a big battle, days-long battle over who would be Speaker. Now there have been days spent knocking people off committees. How much do you think is going to get done in this Congress?
I mean, Kevin McCarthy took about a week to become selected Speaker of the House, something that is typically a ceremonial formality because all of that brawling happens in the months between November and January. So he took a week to become Speaker. They have taken almost an entire month to even organize their committees. We just had our first oversight committee hearing yesterday. Serving in oversight under the great Elijah Cummings, one of the things that he told us is a congressional term is 2 years, but you really have the first 6 months to be effective because you go out in August and when you come back, members of Congress already have primary elections coming up. So you have that first 6 months to really legislate and get your agenda rolling. Kevin McCarthy has already burned through month one doing nothing. No committees being formally organized. He burned a week becoming Speaker of the House. These first 6 months, he cannot afford to lose that kind of time. So now he's down to 5 months. And what we're seeing next week on the docket for, Oversight Committee, for example, they're spending a week doing a hearing on Twitter. So I do not anticipate this Republican majority being able to do much or be effective beyond engaging in political stunts. And that is to the detriment of Americans, both Republican and Democrat, as well as independent, because things are not going to be getting done in the way that they need to be under his leadership.
Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, fresh from Washington, D.C., thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you so much, John.
Appreciate it.